इन्द्रो बृहस्पतिः शन्नो विष्णुरुक्रमः नमो ब्रह्मणे नमस्ते वायो त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्मासि त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्म वदिष्यामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः यश्छन्दसा मृषभो विश्वरूपः छन्दोभ्योऽध्यमृतात् सम्बभूव समेन्द्रो मेधया आस्पृणोतु अमृतस्य देवधारणो भूयासं शरीरं मे विचर्षणं जिह्वा मे मधुमत्तमा कर्णाभ्यां भूरि विश्रुवं ब्रह्मणः कोशोऽसि मेधया पिहितः श्रुतं मे गोपाय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः अहं वृक्षस्य रेरिव कीर्तिः पृष्ठं गिरेरिव ऊर्ध्वपवित्रो वाजिनीव स्वमृतमस्मि द्रविणगुं सवर्चसं सुमेधा अमृतोक्षितः इति त्रिशङ्कोर्वेदानुवचनम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः आप्यायन्तु मम अङ्गानि वाक्प्राणश्चक्षुः श्रोत्रमथो बलमिन्द्रियाणि च सर्वाणि सर्वं ब्रह्मोपनिषदं माहं ब्रह्म निराकुर्यां मा ब्रह्म निराकरोत् अनिराकरणमस्तु अनिराकरणं मे अस्तु तदात्मनि निरतेय उपनिषत्सु धर्मास्ते मयि सन्तु ते मयि सन्तु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः वाङ् मे मनसि प्रतिष्ठिता मनो मे वाचि प्रतिष्ठितम् एवीरावीर्म एधि वेदस्य म आनीस्थः श्रुतं मे मा प्रहासीः अनेनाधितेन अहोरात्रान् सन्दधामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारमवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः भद्रं नो अपि वातय मनः ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येम अक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवागुंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितन्यदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः यो ब्रह्माणं विदधाति पूर्वं यो वै वेदांश्च प्रहिणोति तस्मै तं हगेवमात्मबुद्धिप्रकाशं मुमुक्षुर्वै शरणमहं प्रपद्ये ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। नारायणं पद्मभुवं वसिष्ठं शक्तिं च तत्पुत्रपराशरं च व्यासं शुकं गौडपदं महान्तं योगीन्द्रमथास्य शिष्यं श्रीशङ्कराचार्यमथास्य पद्मपादं च हस्तामलकं च शिष्यं तं तोटकं वार्तिककारमन्यानस्मद्गुरून् सन्ततमानतोऽस्मि। ॐ विश्वं दर्पणदृश्यमाननगरी तुल्यं निजान्तर्गतं पश्यन्नात्मनि मायया बहिर्बोधभूतं यथा निद्रया यत्साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोधसमये स्वात्मानमेवाद्वयं तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः। इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये बीजस्यान्तरिवाङ्कुरो जगदिदं प्राङ्निर्विकल्पं पुनः मायाकल्पितदेशकालकलना वैचित्र्यचित्रीकृतं मायावीव विजृम्भयत्यपि महायोगी वयस्वेच्छया तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः। इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये यस्यैव स्फुरणं सदात्मकम् असत्कल्पार्थकं भासते साक्षात् तत्त्वमसीति वेदवचसा यो बोधयत्याश्रितान् यत्साक्षात्करणाद् भवेन्न पुनरावृत्तिर्भवाम्भोनिधौ तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः। इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नानाच्छिद्रघटोदरस्थितमहादीपप्रभाभास्वरं ज्ञानं यस्य तु चक्षुरादिकरणद्वारा बहिस्पन्दते जानामीति तमेव भान्तमनुभात्येतत्समस्तं जगत् तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः। इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये देहं प्राणमपीन्द्रियानपि चलां बुद्धिं च शून्यं विदुः स्त्रीबालान्तजडोपमास्त्वहमिति भ्रान्ताभृशं वादिनः मायाशक्तिविलासकल्पितमः व्यामोहसंहारिणे तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः। इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये Sorry. So we will continue with the revision of the 4 sutras. So let's chant the 4 sutras. Athato Brahma Jigyasa Athato Brahma Jigyasa Janmadyasya Yataha Janmadyasya Yataha Shastrayonitvat Shastrayonitvat Tattu Samanvayat Tattu Samanvayat. So, as we have been seeing, the Brahma Sutra is not intended to give you new knowledge, some revelation. In a sense it does, but not directly. Those things are done in the Upanishads. In fact, in today's class also, Kaivalya Upanishad, we will hope to see the revelation of new knowledge that we never had before. So the Brahma Sutra is not like that. Instead, what it is to give the logical underpinnings of the knowledge which seeps into us slowly. Because it is such a new knowledge that it goes against the strain of everything that I've done in my life. And so as such, it is not easy to percolate. It takes a while. I remember the example that Swami Dayanandji used to give in this particular regard, and this was when we were in the PRC ashram in 1979 to 82. And at that point, the rage was the Polaroid camera. In fact, I think I had one. It was expensive at that time. It was like $400 or $500. But it was remarkable because you can take a picture. Just imagine how times have changed and how the cell phones now have instant, and there's FaceTime. It's just incredible how technology has changed. But at that time, the Polaroid camera was the only one that could give you instant photographs. So you don't have to take it to a shop and leave it there and then collect it 2 or 3 days later and then look through all of the pictures to see which one came out well. No, the Polaroid, you just put that in, you snap the picture, and you now get the picture. But you don't get the picture right away. So the picture has been taken, but the expression of that, the clarity of it takes a little while. And so you can just sit there and stare and say, yes, that's me. I can see my silhouette. Oh yes, now it's getting better. Then the colors come, and then the clarity comes. And it takes 3 or 4 minutes for a clarity to come. So in that sense, the vidya that we have in our life about Vedanta, the Atma Vidya, is like the Polaroid camera. Swamiji used to love that example. He says that's exactly what it is. And so you just have to study the Upanishads, and you get exposed. Literally, that's the meaning. Just like you expose the picture, you expose yourselves to this vidya. But the vidya takes a little while to be clear. So one of the things required to to expedite this clarity is the logical underpinnings, so that you can see, because what happens is that the mind only goes by reason. That is the dharma of the mind. You can ask it to just do this, just believe in it, and don't have to question it. It can do that for a while, but it would rebel and not really be comfortable until it can sort out the reasons behind it. Only then you can sustain it. Otherwise, it is not sustainable. And this is true for children. This is true for adults. This is the very dharma of the mind. And so when the vidya is first given, the mind says, what? That I am the whole? That I am unlimited? This is incredible. I can't believe this. So the Shastra says, just stay with it. This is exactly what it is. And the mind says, okay, I will stay with it, but I don't get it. And say, I know you don't get it, but just stay with it, reason it out, percolate it, expedite it. And so the Brahma Sutra is actually the underpinnings of the reasonable approach. So this is what is called, Tarka Prasthana. I think we mentioned that last time also. The Tarka Prasthana means, Tarka means logic, and Prasthana means that the highway to logic. So this is a very logical underpinning of the Vidya. And so we will look into that. But here also another thing is, in the explanation of the Brahma Sutra, the tarka, the reason, is suggested by the Shastra. So this is what is called Shastra Pramana. This is an important thing to grasp. So to make a contrast of it, there are two kinds of, you can get two kinds of tarka or two kinds of pramana. We'll define pramana again in a minute. But let's just take reason, tarka. There are two kinds of tarkas. So one is laukika tarka. The other one is shastrika tarka. Laukika tarka means that this is the reason that we employ in our daily life based on all the principles that we know of. This is how we want to say reason. So, for example, I have not seen that person recently. So this is based on your perception. So supposing you go to the classes and this happens all the time. He says, we're missing this person. I don't think he's been to the class for the last 1 month. Has anybody seen that person? So this is Laukika Tarka, that I have not seen the person and I wish everything is okay with that person. This is Laukika Tarka. This Laukika Tarka, it does not apply to the very essence of the whole creation, including God. It doesn't apply. There the Shastrika Tarka has to be employed. How does it not apply? So for example, if you look at, it's just amazing how many people are atheists. How many people are atheists who are totally convinced there is no God? Absolutely not. What are you talking about? So you ask them, why do you feel there is no God? They'll give you Laukika Tarka. They'll say, has anybody seen God? They'll ask you. They instead of taking the defense, they will have the offense and says, have you ever seen God? No, I haven't seen. Anyone else has ever seen God? No, nobody else has seen. What are you talking about? How can you say there is God when nobody has seen it, no one in history has seen it, you haven't seen it, no possibility of seeing it, and then you say there is God? This is ridiculous. So there is no God. This is the Laukika Tarka. Shastra Tarka is there is God because then it gives you a series of reasons by which that you have to grasp. This is Shastrika Tarka. So similarly, there is Laukika Anumana and Shastra Anumana. Laukika Arthapatti, Shastrika Arthapatti. And so this goes back to the very nature of the word Pramanam. So Pramanam, what does Pramanam mean? Pramanam in English would mean proof. Where is the proof? That's called Pramanam. Pramajanyakam, the one that establishes the nature of something is called proof. Where is the proof? So as you know, there are 6 kinds of pramanam, which is accepted by all the wise thinkers of the world throughout our history. So there are 6 of them. You should know this by now. So one of them is Prathyaksha. So everything is really based on Prathyaksha. So Prathyaksha means a direct experience, either seeing or or hearing or touching or smelling, etc. So these are the Pratyaksha. Then you have Anumana. Anumana is based on Pratyaksha, which is called logic, which can be called, something which is reasonable. And so you, for example, if there is black smoke, that means there is fire, even if you don't see the fire. So that's number 2. Then the third one is Upamana. Upamana is a direct comparison. And so Swami Dayananji used to give this example that he says, one time I went to Africa, and there was some new animal that only belongs to Africa that I had never met. I'd never seen, obviously, because I'd never been to Africa. And people said it is the shape of a size of a cow, and it has some different colors are different and so on. So the moment I saw that, he says, yes, that's the one that was given the Upamana. And yes, and he was right. So that's also a proof. Another one is Anupalabdhi. Anupalabdhi means that one which is not there at all. Absence of something. Absence of something is also can be a proof. You can say, do you know that I have nothing in my hand? And so you can say, yes, you have nothing in your hand. I can see that. That's a proof too. Absent. You can say I am not holding a marble on my hand. You can take a marble and you can say which hand has it. And then this is the game that kids also play. Okay, you guess which hand has the marble. And then it's actually on your left hand, and the person says on your right hand. So you open up, there's no marble. It's a proof. You don't even have to open the other one. It's obvious that this one has the marble because this one doesn't. This is called Anupalabdhi. So that's number 4. Fifth one is Arthapatti. This is an important one to see. And we will actually go into that a little bit more details in this revision. And there also you have Laukika Arthapatti and Shastrika Arthapatti. And so this is an important distinction for us to see. Anupalabdhi, I keep on saying Anupalabdhi. Arthapatti means postulation. Postulation. And it is very similar to Anumanam, but has some differences and important differences. So we saw the example that suppose in the month of September, at least in California, when it is not expected to rain, and there was no news about rain, and you go to sleep, and you get up in the morning to get your morning paper from your driveway, and you find that the paper is completely wet, and there is traces of water all over the driveway. And it's not somebody that has just sprayed it, it's a lot of water. This is the evidence that you have. So now you have to, this is the proof. The proof is you see it. So this is the Laukika Arthapatti. That you actually saw that there was a preponderance of water during the night. When you went to sleep, it was dry. Now you can only reason There is only one way you can have so much water, and that is through rain. So you said this, I'm very surprised. There was no hint of it. There was some kind of a cloud burst that happened. And only Ishvara can give you that much water. Recently, we've had so much water in California that there was a report in the San Jose Mercury. It's very interesting. They gave a measurement of how much water fell in the Bay Area for the last 2 weeks. Usually they have a measure in terms of the reservoirs are now 30% full. It used to be 10% now. So like that it has been there. But this is the first time I've seen where they actually give the quantity of water that fell in the Bay Area in the last 2 weeks. And I remember this so well because, and I can't remember the exact figure, some trillion cubic feet or something like this. But they said this is approximately the same amount of water that is in Lake Tahoe. Incredible. Now you can visualize it. You can see it, Lake Tahoe, such a big lake, such a deep lake. What a wonderful lake. And that much water fell on the Bay Area over the 2-week period. Incredible. In the Rudram, there are various epithets, various names to describe Shiva, the Rudra, Shiva. One of them is Midushtama. Midushtama. Midushtama means one who possesses things in huge quantities. So it will be so beautiful to really revise Rudram. I have some plans to do so. I'll reveal it to you at the right time. But the word Midushtapa means an amazing ability to give you things. So much power, incredible power. This much water can come to you in all of a sudden in 2 weeks' time. This is what happens. This is called Arthapati. You cannot believe how much water fell in your backyard. Now, so you have to do is can only be the rain. If you have all the neighbors get together and say, okay, let's pour water over this guy, they cannot do it. Not enough. But just a simple cloud burst, amazing amount of water can fall into it. So this is called Logical Underpinnings. And we will now see the Shastrika Arthapatti. And so the Shastrika Arthapatti is different. Now, a general rule is that the principles of establishing either Anumanam or Arthapatti or Prathyaksha, all of these pramanams, the proofs, the 6 proofs that we saw. Oh, by the way, I didn't complete it, so there is one more proof. One more pramanam. So we went through 5 of them. So the 5 of them were what? Pratyaksha, Anumanam, Upamanam, Anupalabdhi, and Arthapatti. The 6th one is called Shabda. Shabda means words. Means words. Words are also a source of a proof. It's a proof. I gave you that example, but this is really is an important thing to see. The Shabda Pramanam of Vedanta is really in some way the most important one. So I gave the example to you one time that supposing you were having a social get-together, a party, and you had, and those were the days when we used to offer food for people. They could all come in. It's become a distant memory. Nobody does that until the COVID is resolved. But in those days, you would have 15, 20 people, invite them for dinner, and then you give them hors d'oeuvres, some drinks, and dinner, and so on. So anyway, this is the setup. So one of your friends came in and has another person with that. Your friend has another person. And he comes in, he says, I would like you to meet this gentleman who is a childhood friend of mine. He is the Deputy Prime Minister of Belgium. A very nice looking person. You shake your hands with him and so on. So really? Really, I'm so happy to have you. How did you? He says, I was visiting this area, and your friend and I, we went to school together, and he said, I'm going to this party because I'm very friendly with this person. Can you please come along? So I came along with it. So I'm very happy. So I am overjoyed. And then the person says, here is my card. If you ever visit Belgium, please look me up. And I would love to, and if you need any assistance while you're in Belgium. So you say, my wife and I were thinking of actually going to Europe next year. And if I come to Belgium, that I would certainly like to see you. So now, let's consider what has happened. You don't recognize the person until words are spoken to introduce him, isn't it? Person comes in, he's nicely dressed and so on. It could be anyone. But that he is the Deputy Prime Minister of Belgium can only be done through the words. And words of a reliable person. Because, it is very possible that you and I may have some friends who are tricksters. They always play practical jokes and so on. So they bring some ordinary person from the street and say, this is the Prime Minister of Zimbabwe. And then after a while he says, no, I was just joking. He's not, he's just our next door neighbor. He's not the Prime Minister of Zimbabwe. But if there is a reliable person who properly introduces the person and says, this is the Deputy Prime Minister of Belgium, then those words are important. So important, in fact, that if you ever were to follow through with your visit to Belgium and visit that person and look that up, you say, I would like to, you call that person up and he says, yes, this is so-and-so. He says, do you remember me? You had visited. He says, yes, I remember last year I visited your home. He says, my wife and I are visiting Belgium and we would like to get some idea about what places to see. And some, if you can give us a guide or something like this. He says, I'm very happy to do that. I'll send you this is the proof. So Shabda Pramanam is also a proof. Okay. Now, going back to the principles of all the pramanams, the proof, the principles of pramanam. Not the pramanam itself, but how does a pramanam, how does a proof become a proof The principles of those remain the same whether it is Laukika Pramanam or Shastrika Pramanam. There's no difference between them. Principles remain the same. But there are some differences, like in the case of the Laukika Tarka and the Shastrika Tarka. Laukika Tarka says, where is God? I've never seen him. So there cannot be one God. Shastrika Tarka says, I can prove it to you that one who is present everywhere cannot be seen in a specific place. He's everywhere. Now we see that the presence of consciousness, which enlivens the whole world, is the very basis of the whole world. It's just like electricity, that if you see, where is electricity? Where is it not? You see any appliance, you see all heaters are working, light is working, air conditioners are working, radio is working, television is working. None of it can work without electricity or some battery. But where is it? Is it everywhere? It's too subtle for you to touch electricity. You will be annihilated if you were to put your hand into it. So this is the Shastrika Pramana. So the Shastrika, here's the point I was making. The principles of the proof may be different but very similar. There are principles of all pramanams. Logic for all pramanams has to be there. But there are differences. So this is why we went through this last week. And at the very end of the class, we had gone over this, that the Laukika Pramanam does not work on Shastrika Pramanam because one of the elements of Anumanam is Paksha. Paksha means exactly where it is. So we had given this example that suppose you determine the age of a moon to be so many billions of years because of, how do you prove how can the science come up with the age estimation for the moon? Because it analyzes certain elements that are found on the moon and the distance between the moon and the earth, all those kinds of things. And then you say based on that the moon is estimated to be 4.32 billion years. Now, therefore, I think I can now see the age of the sun. I use exactly the same thing. No. Paksha is different. The sun is made of an entirely different set of elements than the moon. And so you have to devise new means to find out the age of the sun. You cannot reapply the principles of moon and then you say, well, the moon is so much, therefore the sun is so much. No, you cannot do that. So similarly here also, if the science uses logic to disprove God, which they do all the time, he says, where is God? Because I cannot measure it, I cannot replicate it, it's not consistent, so there is no God. And so therefore, God means Atma. The expression of God is called anatma. You are looking at the expression of God, which is anatma. The paksha of the anatma does not apply to the paksha of the atma. Okay, then how are we going to find out the paksha of the atma? Through words of an authentic, reliable source. This is where Shabda Jnanam becomes important. Even for the Shastrika Arthapatti, Shastrika Anumanam, the words are important. And the words, how do I know that the words are a proof? Because the person who told me that is reliable. I would otherwise not be able to tell what this is. Like my friend alone can introduce me that this is the vice president, vice deputy prime minister. Only he knows. I don't. And if he is reliable, then I better pay attention to it. I cannot dismiss it. Like this person can come in and say, I would like you to meet Mr. So-and-so. He's the Deputy Prime Minister of Belgium. And you start laughing and he says, yeah. Everybody says he's a deputy. You can't do that. Because if the person very seriously is introducing someone, you better pay attention. So similarly, in the case of Shastra, the Shastra is the most reliable source of information. How do you know that? Because it is not man-made. It's not some person who said, I saw this in the dream. God came to me in dream and said, you shall do this. It's not like that. Anybody can say that. You can say, when did he say that? He says, it was in my dream. Then matter is finished. That means nobody can see anybody's dream. And then you can just say, I want you to do this. This is how it is. God has instructed me. This is not like that. This is series from the very beginning. People said, this is the truth. Look into it. And not only that, there is proof in the sense that people have said yes. In fact, this verse that we chanted, Aham vrikshasya re riva, kirtif prishtam gire riva, urdha pavitro vajiniva srumitam asmi, dravina gumsa varchasam, sumedha amritorkshitaha, itir treshankur vedanu vachanam. He says, I have seen my sense of completeness, independence. My God, what Vedas say, this is true. This is my vachanam. If you want to this is me, it's not hearsay. I have seen it, I've experienced it. There are millions of people who have done it, so the proof is there. All right, so this is what's called the Pramana Pramanavichara. So it's interesting that in the Brahma Sutra, there are two kinds of vichara. Vichara means line of thinking, inquiry, logic. Two kinds of lines of thinking. One is called Pramana Vichara. So we are doing Pramana Vichara at this moment. Pramana Vichara means looking into what do you mean by a proof? How do you prove it? What are the principles of the proof? This must be very clear to us. Otherwise, you can, you're not knowledgeable enough to really put out a defense. Supposing you go to some kind of a get together and then there is this discussion. Swami Dayananji used to say this. He says, supposing you just go to some kind of a party, and especially when there are drinks being sold, alcoholic drinks, and people are drinking, wine and so on and so forth. They're half awake anyway. Their minds have become soft. And then somebody brings up the question, do you believe in God? And then, if somebody asks you a question, you know what that means. That doesn't, they want to know whether you believe in God or not. They want to tell you why they don't believe in God. And so they're trying to instigate this discussion so they can tell you something. So if you have this kind of a discussion going on, and then you say, well, I'm not sure, you kind of stammer a little bit. Well, what do you think? And the person says, I don't believe in God. Well, you don't believe in God? No. Why? It's very simple. Have you ever seen him? Okay. Number one. Number two. Is God supposed to be nice and kind? Yes. And He's also the creator of the world? Yes. Why is there so much violence? Why do young people die? That cannot be any God. End of story. If there is I don't believe in a God, because having a God who is just, who is powerful, and who can be seen, who can be resorted to, that's the kind of God I'm looking for. And I don't see that person, and therefore there is no God. Swami Dayananda used to say, do not say you are wrong. Say you agree with your definition of God. I also don't think there is a God like that. That kind of a God I also don't believe in. A God who expresses himself and who never makes who says, oops, I should not have created so much violence, I made a mistake. No, I don't believe that either. But I have a different view of God. Then you can have a meaningful discussion. So this is the situation, that the Pramanam, so this is called Pramana Vichara. So Pramana Vichara means the method of principles through which Pramanam can be analyzed, which is consistent. Where you can, so this is what Brahma Sutra is in the first 4 or 5 sutras, this is what we have done, is that you have to be very pure in the way you are approaching things. Don't change the paksha in the middle, and don't apply Laukika Pramanam to Shastrika Pramanam like that. So this is one. The second kind of Vichara is Prameya Vichara, not Pramana Vichara. Prameya means what is to be known. Pramanam is how to know it. Proof. But the proof of what is called Prameya. So the Pramana Vichara in Brahma Sutra also is not a revelation, but in fact it is the compilation of Pramana from the various Upanishads. We've seen this also, so this should be understood in terms of what Brahma Sutra means. So the Brahma Sutra is not a new knowledge, but it says that this is the Purusha that we are trying to reveal through the proofs. And it is consistent in all of the Upanishads. So this is what is called Samanvaya. Tattu Samanvayat. So anyway, to summarize, Shastra has in the Brahma Sutra both Pramana Vichara as well as Pramana Vichara. Anyway, I think we'll leave it at that. So let's go on. So if you look at now the Shabda Pramana, equivalent to this is my friend who is the Deputy Prime Minister of Belgium, that kind of a Shabda Pramanam, which only a knowledgeable person can do, not I. That Shabda Pramana in Vedanta is called Adhyasa, called an error. Error says, Adhyasa says, what you see is an erroneous view of the world, yourself, and God. You are experiencing something, I know that, no doubt about it. You also know it, I also know it. But what I'm here to tell you is that this conclusion that you have about the world, yourself, and the Creator is erroneous. It's there, but it is tinged with error, very much like a classical example that you are looking at a rope, and because of certain circumstances you think it is not a rope, it is a live snake. Like how that is an error. Therefore, your view of the world is an error that needs to be corrected. So with this as the very central theme of the Shabda, Adi Shankara, in his Wisdom and Glory, decided that before he would start analyzing the various sutras of the Brahma Sutra, he would actually analyze the elements of making a mistake. So this is what is called Adhyasa Bhashya. So in the Adhyasa Bhashya, he says, we need to understand the nature of making a mistake and let people, and this is what our view is, and let people poke holes in it, and we will answer it, and we will say, yes, this is exactly how it is. So in the case of, let's say, I think maybe that's the only time that we will have today, let's look at the example of the rope and snake. And we say that that is exactly how our view of the world is. That the world seems to be harmful, like a snake could be harmful. It is difficult to catch, like a snake is difficult to catch. It's moving like a snake moves. And it puts fear in me like a snake does. So there is elements of them were very similar to it. And once you see the snake to be a non-snake, you don't have to kill the snake or anything like that. But once you see the snake to be a false snake, all of the elements of fear and power the world has over you and so on will disappear. You'll, as though you defanged the snake. So this is the thesis. So now we'll just take a look at poking holes into this thesis. How the others will say, no, this doesn't make any sense. We agree that in the rope and snake, this phenomena can occur. But you cannot apply that phenomena between Atma and Anatma. Why do you say that? We'll give you 4 reasons, the Purva Paksha says. So as a summary, we can just go into this. Alright, so there are 4 reasons for my objections as to why the rope snake does not apply to Atma and Anatma. What are those 4? Number 1. Rope is a Prathyaksha Vishaya. It is an object of your experience. You can objectify it. Atma you cannot objectify. You yourself say, I am not telling you what, I am just taking your words and simply reciting it. You are saying the Atma cannot be seen. Didn't you say that? We say yes, we saw that. We said that. Okay. Because it cannot be seen, but the rope can be seen, so the two cannot be equated. And so in each one of these 4, we will propose the objection and also give the answer. So this is the part of the summary, so we don't have to really look at it in more detail. So the answer to that is, you don't have to have something which is objectifiable in order to make a mistake about it. What? How can you say that? All it should be is that it should be evident. It is there. It doesn't have to be an object to be seen to be a subject of this error. Don't you know that you are there? How do you know you are there? Oh, I don't have to prove to anybody that I'm there. I am there. What I am can be proved, has to be proven. That I am so many years old, that has to be proven. But the fact that you are there is evident, self-evident. So you don't have to be a Prathyaksha Vishaya. Just the fact that if you were not there, then I would agree with it. And another example given is that when you say the sky is blue, or when you say the sky is, yeah, that's even better. Leave aside the sky is blue. So in fact, compare the two. So you are saying that the sky is blue, which is a Pratyaksha Vishaya. Right? Sky is blue means that it is blue in color, therefore your eyes can experience it. This is what you're saying. I am saying that the sky is there. How do you know that the sky is there? Space is there without having to see it. You cannot see space. You can only see some things that are in it, but not the space itself. that doesn't mean that the space is not there. So your first objection is not valid because the Atma is self-evident. It doesn't have to be an object to be evident. Okay, so this is number one. Then he says, okay, I get it. Let's give you the second objection. Second objection is Ajñātatvam. Ajñātatvam means that it must be unknown. See, so the rope is unknown to you. That's how you can make a mistake. But you say that the Atma is known to you. Don't you say it is Swayam Prakasha? You said self-evident. It's known to you. So you cannot say it is unknown to you. You cannot make a mistake. So to that we say, you are only partially right. You are partially right, which means you are partially wrong. Partially wrong is enough. How is that? My Atma is partially known, partially unknown. And that partially unknownness makes all the difference. Doesn't have to be completely unknown. How do you think I am partially known and partially unknown? So, if you look at the three different aspects of Atma, which is Sat, Chit and Ananda. Satchidananda. There, the Sat and the Chit are known. That I am there is easy to grasp. That I am conscious, I can move my eyes, whatever, I can do all of this, also true. But Ananda is missing. That my Swarupa is Ananda. I am the very basis of joy. This is not known. And this is not known because there is a difference between Jiva and Brahman, Ishvara and Jiva. The unlimitedness of it makes me joyful, and I don't know that. So my Ananda is very truncated all the time, which is a mistake. So therefore, Ajñātatvam is equally applicable to the Atma, even though some portions of it I do know. This is the answer to your second objection. Third objection. Sadrishyatvam. So the person says that the rope and the snake have similarity. Have a similarity. How is it similarity? Because the size of the rope is the size of the snake. The undulations of the rope is the undulations of this. The curvature of the rope is the curvature of the snake. The width of the rope is the width of the snake. So there is similarity. But you don't take the rope to be a tree. You can only take the rope to be something which is very similar to it. Now, You say that the Atma is unique. Don't you say that? We say yes. We do say it. There's nobody like it. If that's the case, you cannot make it to be something which is similar to it. A good objection. So sadrishyam, sadrishyatvam is not there. So we say to that, you are right, but there are exceptions to this rule. Like there always are exceptions. And the exceptions may not be true in general, but they are true as an exception. As for an example, we know that in our experience, the intelligent cause and the material cause are always different. Always different. So, the maker of a clay pot is different from the material of the clay pot. The engineers who design this cell phone are different from the material of the cell phone. This is true in the whole world. But there are exceptions to this. We know the two exceptions. One is the spider, which has abhinna nimitta upadana karanatvam. And the other one is the dreamer. In the case of the dreamer, the nimitta karanam is the jiva, and the upadana karanam is also the jiva. So there are exceptions, and in this particular case, you don't need to have sadrishyatvam. You cannot have it. So for example, again going back to the sky is colorless, but it can be colorful. And the colorfulness is not because of its own changes, but some other things that make it look like it is colorful. So the sky is never dark and never lighted. It is always the same, but the absence of sun makes it dark and the presence of sun makes it light. Anyway, so that's the sadrishyatva. The fourth one is the person says, by the way, you can never make a mistake unless you've had a previous experience which gives rise to the possibility of that thought. So for example, you cannot make a rope to be a snake. Like for example, take a child. Take a newborn, not a newborn, but let's say you have a 2-year-old toddler who has never seen a snake. So the 2-year-old toddler cannot make the mistake that this rope is a snake, because it doesn't have the vasana, the previous vasana of a snake. Now you say that Atma is always there. And so therefore there is no reason for you to say that there was a previous mistake which was real that now it expresses itself as anatma. This is a kind of a very sophisticated, obtuse objection, but it is there. And in the time that we have, I won't go into more details about that, but just completely go on. So there the answer to that is that you don't have to have had the experience of a real snake in order to make a mistake that this rope was snake. How? You can actually see a snake in the movies. Or sometimes, you have news about on television how a snake can bite people and people can die, or how powerful snakes there are. You've never seen one, but it's not a real snake, but a picture of a snake is enough. So similarly here also, we say that the answer is a very important one to this. This is something that needs to be grasped. Here, Adi Shankara uses the word Naisargikaha. If you look at the Sanskritam in one of them, it will say Naisargikaha. Naisargikaha means anadi. Sarga means creation. Naisarga means non-creation, always there. Anadi. This is a very important concept that we should be aware of. So therefore, ajnanam, ignorance, does not have a beginning. It's always been there. Anadi. So the adhyasa has always been there. Purva adhyasa uttara samskara. Previous adhyasa gives rise to new samskaras. And that samskara is based on all the old samskaras. This has been there forever. And so Swami Dayanandaji gave this example once, and he says, supposing you're having a class and somebody comes in and you introduce that person. Oh, by the way, this is my wife. And everybody says, oh, good, namaste, namaste. Now, the question is, when did you not know that this was my wife? I can ask this question. When did you find out she was not my wife? You can find out when you found out that she is my wife. But there is the ignorance of her being my wife is anadi. Has always been there. So therefore, really speaking, adhyasa adhyasa is real. It is real in the sense that it is present, and in fact it is the basis of my making a mistake about the world, God and myself. And we need to understand that this in fact is the real cause that is the basis of Shabda Jnanam, which is a Pramanam. It is a Pramanam. So this Adhyasa, when the right conditions are created, will cease to be an adhyasa, which will make sure that all of your life's experiences are seen to be in a different light and they cease to be a problem to you. This is the basis of adhyasa. And so I'll end the class with that. There is a little bit more to be said about it, not much, and then we will go into the revision of the very first sutra itself, Atato Brahma Jigyasa. So I hope it is not too detailed. It's something which is a revision, but a revision that needs to be strengthened to make it pakka. And so I hope you find this to be of use for your thinking. Okay, so with that, let me finish the last 5 verses of the Dakshinamurti Stotram, and then we will open up for any questions that you may have. Om Rahu Grasta Divankarendu Sadrisho Maya Samachadinat Sanmatra Karanopasamharnato Yo Bhut Sushuptaf Puman Pragaswap Swamiti Prabodha Samaye Yaf Pratyabhigyayate Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye Balyadishu api jagradadishu tatha sarva swavastha swapi vyavritta svanuvartamanamahamittyantas purantam sada swatmanam prakati karoti bhajatam yo mudraya bhadraya tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye namaidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye Vishvam Pashyati Karyakaranataya Swaswami Sambandataha Shishyacharyataya Tathaiva Pitre Putradhyatmana Bhedataha Swapne Jagrati Vaya Esha Purusho Maya Paribhramitaha Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye Bhurambhamsya nalo nilo ambarmaharnartho himamshuf puman ityajabhati characharatmakamidam yasyaiva murtyashtakam nanyat kinchana vidyate vimrishatam yasmat parasmat vibhoho tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye namaidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye Sarvatmatvamiti sputikritamidam yasmadamushminstave tenasya shravanat tadartamananat dhyanat cha sankirtanat sarvatmatvamahavibhuti sahitam syadishwaratvam swataha siddhyetat punarashtadha parinatam chaishwaryam avyahatam Ashubhani nirachaste tanoti shubhasantatim smritimatrena yat pumsam brahmatan mangalam param atikalyana rupatvat nitya kalyana samshrayat smartranam varadatvat cha brahmatan mangalam viduhu omkaraschatha shabdascha dvavetau brahmanah pura kantham bhitva viniryatau tasman mangilikau vubhau omatha 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 asato ma satgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityormamritam gamaya om purnamadav purnamidam purnat purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om Nice to see you all. Wonderful. Happy New Year to all of you. Arvind, your question is Adhyasa the same as Bhranti? Yes, pretty much. So the Adhyasa is a more encompassing term which means an error. And one can say that the Bhranti is one of the elements of the error. As we saw in the Tuesday night class, we are going through this identification. So where we saw there was Sahaja Tadatmyam and Karmajam Tadatmyam and Bhrantijanya Tadatmyam. So Bhrantijanyam Tadatmyam means, so the identification itself could be called Adhyasa, but Bhranti is one of the important elements of the Adhyasa, but it can also be seen to be a replaceable term for it as well. Means something I don't get it. Something is wrong. I don't have a correct understanding of it. So in that sense, Bhranti also is can be a substitute, a synonym for Adhyasa. Akshay says, please explain again the difference between Prathyaksha and Upamana. So, Prathyaksha means your own sense organs give you the proof. Right? So you can say, I saw the person. Or you can say, I can hear that person directly on the phone. So that's my friend. Or something even close to it, your own relatives, your wife, your husband or something. That is Pratyaksha. Upamana needs to have words to do a comparison. It's a comparison, not a direct Pratyaksha. It is based on Pratyaksha. In fact, all the Pramanas are more or less based on Pratyaksha alone. But it adds the additional element that somebody has to do a comparison. So you can say that this is, I just thought of it. So you can tell from the accent of a person. Supposing you are hearing and you are telling from the accent of the person, you can tell someone, you see, this accent is an Indian accent. So somebody has to do a comparison from based on which the Pratyaksha becomes a proof. So that's the difference between them. And the example of seeing this animal in Africa, which you had never seen before, if you were to have seen that animal, you can say that I saw an animal, but you couldn't identify it because somebody had to give you an introduction that if you see this kind of an animal, the name of that animal is this. That is called Upamana. So I hope that's clear. If not, then I can take another try at it. Anyway, it's good to see you all after a long time, and hope you all have a good, healthy life, year ahead of you, and look forward to seeing you again. Namaste, we'll see you next week. Om.